Well, hey everybody, it's Doug here. That's Doug Mystic Eye on Board Game Geek. Welcome to another playthrough. I was traveling, so I was in lovely Rochester, Minnesota and Minneapolis, St. Paul area this past week, so I didn't get to do any filming of any game sessions. Sorry for the delay and the gap in the activity. I apologize for that. I was going to try and make some clever way of tying that into this game, but unfortunately I just couldn't find a way to do that. Anyway, what are we going to play now? We are going to play a very story-driven game called Castaways by Alberto Corral, and this is by Passport Games. It is a game for 1 to 4 people. It takes about 120 minutes, and it's supposedly for ages 14 or up. I think if there's an adult kind of managing the game process, you could probably get a little younger than that. But what is this game about? Well, it's about surviving an island. If you've played games like the awesome Robinson Crusoe Adventures on the Cursed Island, then you will have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish in this, which is survive. But we're going to go over each component of the game real quickly before we start our session. We'll talk about the characters that we're going to play, and we'll talk about how we play the game. At its heart, it is a worker placement game with some other elements to it that make it interesting and different, and we'll talk about those, well, immediately. So let's get started on that and have that discussion. Well, this is our main board, and we're going to go over that very quickly. Then there are also 2 sideboards that go along with this. Now, this board here is in 2 pieces, and this is where we take our actions. Each player has a character. We're going to play a 3-player game, which means we'll have 3 different characters in this, and associated with them are 2 colored meeples, and those meeples are our action pods that represent the actions that we are taking on the island. In addition, you have a white pawn that the current first player or current start player has that allows that player to take an additional camp action before anybody does anything, and I'll explain that in a moment. But in our turn sequence, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw an event card from here. On that event card, a couple of things. There might be a special, there will be some kind of special effect, but there's also going to be a symbol that affects the weather, and the weather can affect our energy level and our general health and well-being of our survivors on the island. Then here we have a deck of salvage cards. As our ship was wrecked, things will wash up on the shore, and when we take an action to salvage those as they appear, the cards for the events will show us if one of these lovely items washes up on shore. Now, how it works is we have a various amount of energy, each character does, and typically that's going to be 6, but we have one character that has 1 more, and we'll get into the characters in a moment. But we're going to take actions. So the first thing we're going to do is after we draw our event, then we're going to take actions, starting with the camp action, which is on this board over here, and then followed by placing actions on this board here. Basically, we have a space for foraging that allows us to get food, a place to gather wood, and I'll talk about this next. The one thing that I'm not the biggest fan of with this game is it's not truly cooperative. It is semi-cooperative, meaning there's an element of somebody winning. In this case, you gather story points from doing various things, from exploring the island to taking certain special actions. Or, as an action, you can actually, it's an action that costs no energy. You can write in your diary, which basically allows you to draw story point tokens and screw everybody else because you're not taking any actions. Well, at least with one of your pawns. So that is something else you can do. Then here, for 2 energy, you can, if a crate has washed up on shore, you get to draw some cards from here and pass them out amongst the players. This is the space to light our campfire. Once it's lit, as long as we have wood in our box here, which I need to look at the setup. I think we have 1 to start, but I have 2 food there. You basically have you have food in this box minus 1 of the players. So basically, if you have 3 players, you're going to have 2 food, and that's what we have. So you're going to have to get food first thing in the first turn of the game to make sure everybody gets fed, or you suffer a penalty. Here's this whole section here is for building things. This one's a question mark, means we don't know what's going to be there next. This is our shelter. As we improve our shelter, it allows us to get better rest and recovery during the nighttime. This is to build a giant bonfire to help save us, and this is to build a giant help sign. This requires just effort and energy. We put cubes on there to represent the effort we've made. When we get 12, we get to flip it over. and this one, the bonfire, we have to gather 8 wood, and we can put a wood on there from our stockpile to here for every energy we spend. So that's that section. Of course, all of these are rest, and this space allows you to take an extra camp action using your regular action. This is exploring, and we'll get to that second board in a moment. When you explore, you're going to go off this board, you're going to go onto another board where you're going to explore the island, and that's where most of the storytelling takes place. Though it'll take place from these things as well. Now, how do you win this game? Well, we're going to get to the storyboard to talk about that. But the next thing I want to do is talk about a camp action, because that's actually where we would start our game. So the first player, whoever the first player is, and it rotates after every turn, gets to place on the camp. Now, we're going to have more cards here eventually on the camp. They get to take their first action with this token and put it on here. They're also going to be the first player with their regular actions as well. And you have a variety of things you can do. You can increase your energy temporarily with this card. This one you can pay to draw 3 cards from the Coast deck. The Coast is the exploration deck. That allows you to find stuff, basically. You can just automatically go find some food for yourself, not for everybody else. You can plan an exploration of the island, which allows you to not have to spend energy to do that, to go on the island, and you also receive additional story points. And then you can fish, and fishing is one of the main ways we're going to get food. You can see that there is a large stack of fish towels, and underneath those is a number that represents how many fish that represents, or units of food that will represent when we need to feed our survivors. So that is the camp. Now, when we go from there, we're going to go to the main board over here and start taking our regular actions. Now, part of the heart of the game. This is our exploration board of the island, and you can see that we have 3 decks here. This is the coast, this is the interior, and this is the deep interior of the island. I think that's what they're called, or something similar to that. And as we explore, we're going to move along this track up through here, and when we get here, we can meet certain conditions and perhaps win the game. Also, on the event cards, you will see these icons at the bottom. If we happen to have some of those items at the time that we are at the top, it will also help us to win. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. It's an awful long haul to get us ourselves from the beach up to there. Trust me, you'll see. But what we're going to do when we take an action is we're going to draw one of these cards. We're going to follow what it says. Now, that might allow us to move up the track. It also might increase our difficulty. This track here is a track to see how lost we get on the island. We have to roll 2d6 over this number to come back to our camp. If we are too high and we can't do it, then we're going to get lost on the island, which means we have these special little lost tokens that we'll place on that board to show that we are lost in our exploration. Then we're going to end. After we've done that, we're going to resolve all the actions on the main board, and lastly, the explorer actions here. After that, we're going to see if anybody's lost, or actually we'll see if anybody's lost along the way or already lost. Then we're going to do a survival phase where we have to feed and rest, and then we do the end of the night where we deal with injuries and upkeep. And you'll see how that goes as we go along. Now, let's talk about our characters real quick before we start our first turn, and then in this video, we'll take our first full turn. In subsequent videos, we'll probably take 2 full turns. Alright, here's our characters. So, the ones that I randomly drew 3. We got Charles Bernard. Now, it was kind of nice to have him pop up because one of the executives in our organization is named Charles Bernard. I thought that was amusing. So, Charles here is a doctor. He can help to heal people, basically, and when we use his ability, we'll explain it then. And Alexander, her ability is very simple. She's a fisher. So that means when she's fishing in the camp or a special action that would allow her to do that, she gets to take an extra fishing tile, which means more food for us. And then lastly, we have Alexander Selkirk. He's tough, so he has an extra energy over everybody else. And that's it for the characters. That's what they do. Now, they're going to gather stuff and take actions as we go, so you'll see them improve along the way. But now, let's just get started with our first turn, and you'll see how it goes. Now, again, the first thing we're going to do is draw our event card. Okay, here we are on the main board. Oops, meant to grab a wood, not another food. We have our 2 food and our 1 wood that we start in our box here, our storage box. And then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw one of these cards. I did shuffle them, so let's see what happens. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of the game, so let's see. So first we're going to look over here on this side, and we see nothing, so that means there's no effect to the weather. The weather stays the same. You can see our survivors looking out over the sunny coast. Now this says 6, so unless there are 6 or more cubes, there are 2, 4, 6. If there are, then one of them washes up on shore. So this is probably the best time to have this card come out. So one of the pieces washes up on shore. Now we're going to look at our special ability. Today you realize how desperate your situation is. Well, that's not good. All castaways get -1 energy if the group doesn't own a Bible. Well, we don't own a Bible, so let's pop down to our characters and see what that does to us. Remember, energy is our resource, so basically Doctor's down to 5, Anne's down to 5, and Alexander's down to 6. So that's what the effect of that event is, and now that event has expired. Basically, the only reason we need to even look at it further is if we were getting to the end of the island and we had some of that extra items that we need to have to win. But let's go now to our first player actions. It's going to be Charles Bernard, and remember the first thing he does is he gets to place his free camp action as the start of his turn. Exploring is a critical part of the game. It's the way we win. So I think that what Charles is going to do is going to take this camp action first. He's going to save the fishing action for our fisher. So on her turn, when she gets to take her camp action, she'll probably do that. Even though we will need some additional food this turn, so I can expect that we'll be doing some foraging as well. But this plan and exploration says if your next action is to start an exploration, which it will be, don't pay any energy for it, and receive 1 story token. So that's the thing he's going to do first. So he spent some time in camp planning for an exploration, and now we're going to place his first player marker. Sorry, it's not really his first player marker, it's his first player action. So his first action of 2 will be to follow along up with that camp action. He will place here to do an exploration. Now normally it costs him energy, but because of that card it does not cost him anything. Now as we're placing actions, players can choose to follow him and go on that adventure with him or not. It's up to the rest of the players. But now, since he's placed his first, we're going to place Anne's. Remember, Anne is our fisher. Now she says, well, not to be outdone, she is definitely going on the adventure with him, so she'll place her first pawn there. And Alex says, hey, we got to get exploring on this island, so I'm in agreement with that. And by the way, I need to take there. So Anne is down to 4, and Alexander is down to 5 from taking those actions. Now we go back to Charles Bernard. Now he says, okay, well, in that case, I think I don't want to spend a whole lot more energy, but we only have 2 food, so that's important. Alex says, you know what, don't worry about it, I'll take care of the food. So what is our man here going to do? We also need to light our campfire. Very important thing, but it could take a lot of energy. So maybe it is not worth. Maybe Alex should light our campfire instead. But we don't want to waste too much of his energy. However, we could use some good stuff. So I think he's going to place there. That's going to put him down to 3. And it's his second action, so it's all he's going to do. Our fisher, she says, well, we're going to need to do. If we're going to light our campfire, we're going to need more wood. And I don't want to spend a bunch of energy. So she's going to go here. That also puts her down to 3. And then last but not least, we have Alexander Selkirk. He's going to go here for his campfire. You notice there's a question mark there. So we can decide how much energy we're going to use to try and light our campfire. And then when we take that action, we'll have to roll that number or less on a d6. So he's already at 5. He doesn't want to go down too far because he is on this expedition. So I think he'll go down 1, 2, 3. So down to, well, it's 2 energy. Wait, 5, 4, 3. Yeah, he's got 5. He's going to spend 1, 2, yeah, down to 2. To see, spend 3 points, 50-50 chance, see if he can light our campfire. Okay, that is all of our action placement. So the next thing we would do is we would see if there's anybody lost. There's not, because we haven't done an exploration yet. And then we go on to our resolution. Now with the resolution, we always start top to bottom, left to right. So the first thing we're going to do, and I just realized we didn't get any food, any additional food. Hopefully we'll find something in our exploration. So let's hope, because otherwise someone's going to pay for that. Anne took the first action in collecting some wood. So what we're going to do there is we're just going to take, it's simple, we're just going to take a piece of wood and we're going to add it to our box. Now we have 2 pieces of wood, and that'll give us a buffer to keep that fire lit. Now the next action we're going to take is Charles Bernard. Now we're going to draw a set of cards from here, that's the salvage action. So we're going to basically draw 5 cards from the remains of the ship deck, and show them to the group. Each player chooses one card, starting with, of course, the player that did the draw and going clockwise around. So we're going to take 5 of these cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I thought I had 6 there. I'm glad I didn't. Okay, we're going to put that back and we're going to look at these. So we have medicines, always a good thing. The wild tribes, that's good when we're exploring. We run into tribal issues. Barrel of gunpowder, really good. And ink, I don't like the ink. The ink's bad. It kind of hurts everybody. And rope. Add 1 rope to the storage and discard this. Well, Charles says, you know what? I think he says I'm going to take the barrel of gunpowder because I know I'm going to be exploring this turn and that could come in handy. Basically, what does the gunpowder do? Well, it says you may discard the barrel of gunpowder at any moment in order to take 6 fish tiles and add them to your storage, so we can always do that, or add 4 to 1 player's strength. Who knows, maybe it could be useful in some other way. It is also worth 4 story points at the end of the game if I don't use it, but we probably will. Then Alex says, you know, I'm kind of a giver, don't like to take, so she's going to actually take the rope. That puts a rope in our storage box right there. You can see here's a rope towel. It simply goes down in our storage box. Let's see. Let me think about this for just one more moment for Alex, see what he's going to take. He's going to take the medicines. Even though we have a doctor, you never know if you're going to need something extra, so he takes that. That means we're going to discard the wild tribes and ink. Those are not going to be in play unless we have to shuffle. We have to go through those cards again, which is highly unlikely. I think there's enough. By the way, just a case in point, there are 15 cards in the 3-player game in the event deck, and once those cards run dry, if we have not found our way off the island, we lose. It's one of the losing conditions. Okay, now let's move on to our next action. Our next action is Mr. Selkirk lighting the campfire. So let's go to the dice bowl and see if he can succeed. Okay, let's roll our dice to see if we get our campfire lit. A 2, we do, we succeeded. So let me go show you what that looks like. Okay, here's our campfire, so we're going to flip this over. That represents that the campfire is lit, and we're going to place one of our wood on it. Now, in our upkeep phase, we're going to burn that wood, a rest phase actually, when we rest our characters. And we have to put another piece of wood before the end of the next rest phase on that fire. We had to keep that fire stoked. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but for now our campfire is lit, which is good because that means when we rest at night we get a bonus for resting. This is assuming we all don't get lost on our adventure. So the next thing that happens is that we actually go on our adventure. By the way, I need to remove this cube from the box, the salvage box, because we did do our salvage. And now we have all 3 of our characters going on an adventure together on the island. So now we move over to the island board and see how that works. Okay, so our exploration is actually not a difficult thing, but this is where a lot of the story elements come into play because we're going to draw these cards and they have stories in them. Okay, these stories affect, we'll find things on the island that are important or useful to us, and we also have this big giant deck of cards that are numbered from 1 to 105. Oftentimes it will tell us to take a numbered card, a specific numbered card based on the story, and insert it somewhere in these decks. So we're going to see how that goes. First thing we're going to do is draw our first exploration card. So, an electrical storm. Now, this symbol here does mean that we advance on the island, and everybody was together, so we are all going to advance. And then we're going to read our card. Okay, what is the impact of our card? It says by big flashes of lightning lit the sky. One of them struck someplace on the island. Add card 84 to the interior of the island. Then we're going to roll 2 dice. You get struck by lightning, and if you roll 2 ones, you get struck by lightning, suffering 2 injuries. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is we search this big giant deck, and we're looking for card 84. So we're going to go to card 84. There's 85, 84. Okay, smoke. So what do we do with this card now? It says we're going to add this card to the interior. So this is the interior deck here. We're going to basically see this has a matching greenback. So we're going to take this card and we're going to shuffle it in to our interior deck. Now at some point we're going to run into that, and it will continue the story of what happened when the electrical storm struck the island. And hopefully it didn't strike us, and we're about to find that out. So we're going to put that back, shuffled up, and go to the dice bowl. So technically this card draw is part of Charles Bernard's actions, but let's see what he rolls. Well, that's pretty close. But no, he did not get struck by lightning, so that's going to end that exploration card. After that, there's nothing else to do with this. It's simply discarded. Now Anne takes her card, her exploration card. We get to see what happens next. Now, who it is isn't as important, but sometimes, as you noted in the last one, it can affect the person that drew the card. So again, we have a foot symbol up there. This is awesome. That means we get to move all of our guys up one more, so we are now getting closer to exploring this part of the island. There's an eclipse. It says, the sun slowly disappeared for a few minutes. Everything was as dark as night. Add card 19 to the interior of the island. So let's do that. Once again, here's our big giant deck of stuff. Here's card 19. We're going to simply pull it out. You can see it's in the greenback card. And it says offerings. Now, we're not going to read this now because we want to be surprised when it does come up. But the eclipse created some kind of event that we're going to shuffle into the interior of the island. And when we get to that point, we'll perhaps start to encounter these. Maybe not. It could be that we don't touch them at all. It creates massive replayability in this game. And then, of course, we're going to discard this, and we had no further event, good or bad or indifferent. Now we're going to move on to Alexander Selkirk's exploration card. Okay, now let's draw Alexander Selkirk's card. Oh, it's a big one. A pond. Now, this map icon means that this pond must be big and causing us some trouble because it's caused things to be a little more difficult to find our way home. Now, after this card, at the end of this, I could decide for Alexander to go back to camp, or he can continue to trek on. The group's going to keep going until everybody's gone back to camp. It says, we found a pond with stagnant water that produced a terrible smell. Each explorer chooses at least one of the following options. We can drink, which will allow us to recover 2 energy, but on a 1, 2, or 3 you get sick, and we have to resolve card 76. Okay. We can wade across the pond and advance 1 space on the exploration track. We roll 1 die. On a 1 we get sick. Avoid the pond. The detour takes longer but loses 2 energy. Okay, we're not going to avoid the pond. And then at the end we're going to add card 17 to the interior. So let's think about this pond for a minute. I think, well, it would be nice to get some energy back. I don't want to get sick, so it's probably best to wade across the pond. We're not going to drink it, which is going to advance us up 1. But then we're going to roll for Alexander, and if he rolls a 1, he's going to get sick. Actually, each explorer can take this one option of their choice. I think we're all going to take the same option. We've decided. So Alexander rolls. He rolls a 3. Charles Bernard rolls a 2, so he's fine. And I'm just rolling him off camera. And rolled a 2 as well. So we are safe from the pond. Now we already did advance us on the track. Now we have to add card 17 to the interior of the island. As you can see, we're building up stories quite rapidly. Okay, let's find card 17. There it is, a pit of quicksand. That's not good. So I'm not going to read it now, but I think we can get the gist of what that's going to do to us if we uncover it. So we're going to take that card. We are going to shuffle it into our interior island deck, like we have now 3 cards so far. So we're building up quite an interesting storyline for when we hit the interior of the island. Not good at all. Okay, now we're going to wrap back around to Charles Bernard. He can choose. Is he going to continue on? Nobody's hurt. We haven't really lost any energy to speak of, and we're only at a 5 to find our way back, so I think he's going to continue. We're going to draw 1 more card. Feline paw prints. I found the remains of a ram horribly mutilated by a predator. Add card 12 to the interior of the island. You may discard a story token and add 2 food to the supply. Well, we don't have any story tokens yet, so... Oh, wait! We do actually have a story token. And it was Charles that drew it, so I drew 1 for him. Here it is. We don't know what it is, but he can discard it to add 2 food to the supply. And he says, okay guys, this is my 1 gimme for the betterment of the camp. I'm going to do that so we know that everybody can eat. Here's 2 food. Now these food don't spoil, unlike food tokens or counters. This food counters do spoil. You can see that this also has the foot icons, so we have all managed to move up 1 further, getting pretty far along. And then we have to add card 12 to the interior of the island. So we go back to our big giant deck of cards, and we find card 12, which is going to be some kind of predator, I imagine. Jaguars, looks like. Yeah, jaguars. We take that, you notice again, greenback card for the interior, and we're going to add that to this pile. Yeah, so, man, all kinds of crazy things can happen to us when we get there. We're only 3 moves away from getting there, and we're still in pretty good shape. So, heading on to Anne, she says, you know, I'm going to keep going. I think we need to keep going, guys. What do you think? You coming with? Well, of course we are. Nothing has stopped us so far. Let's see what we get. Animal tracks. The tracks disappear into the bushes. Add card 15 to the interior of the island, and as you can see, we have a foot, so we have moved yet further again. This has been pretty good. So we just have to add card 15. The one thing I can say is the more of these cards we add, the more challenging this is going to become for us. But we do find animal tracks, and that means it will probably lead us to, as we see, boar piglets, but we'll see the details when we run across it, if we run across it. Okay, so Alexander says, man, we're getting a long ways and we're not really suffering yet. We're going to hit something bad eventually, and we have enough food in the camp now to survive on, but we're going to keep going again. Strange berries. Okay, so this increases our difficulty to get back by 1. It says sometimes we are forced to run the risk. That's why we ate the fruit that grew on the island, knowing that some of them were as deadly as the worst poison. Okay, it says we find a bunch of appetizing berries. If we decide to eat them, we roll a die. On a 1, we lose all our energy and receive an injury. On a 2 or 3, we lose an energy. On a 4, 5, or 6, we receive an energy. We get to add 1 food to the storage and take a story point. So Alex says, I'm low on energy. I'm going to pass. He's not going to eat them. Charles says, you know, I'm a doctor. I can take care of myself. I'm going to give it a go. So we're going to go to the dice bowl, and he's going to try the berries. Hopefully he doesn't roll a 1, but let's see what he rolls. Okay, he rolled a 1, so he has now currently lost all his energy, and he suffers an injury. Now what that means is we take a white cube and we place it on the top of his card. He will recover that if he gets back to camp and rests, but he's got no energy to do anything with at this point, and he is sick. So he says, that was a bad move on my part. I'm horribly ill now. I've been poisoned by these berries. Anne says, you know what? These other berries look like they're pretty good. I think I'm going to try them too, and let's see what we get there. A 6, so Anne got lucky. She got this. She gets to receive a food. She receives a food. That means it goes on her actual character card. We get to, then it says we get to add a food to the storage. That is awesome, because these are permanent food that don't rot, and we got plenty of food in the storage now. And she gets to take, I'm going through these and taking one at random. I'm not going to show you what it is. She gets a story point, and that is going to end that card. Now, Alex had already decided he wasn't going to do it at all. So let's go back to our characters and see what's going to happen next. Charles is hurting. He's got no energy left. He's got to go back to camp. Now, it is at a 6, so we have to roll 2d6, and basically we have to roll better than a 6 to get back to camp and not be lost. So let's see what he rolls. Okay. Oh, close. He gets back to camp just fine. So he has returned to camp. To mark that, I'm going to take his meeple off the exploration track and board and put it back with his character. He is back. Now, Anne and Alexander are thinking, okay, well, we lost our doctor. He's gone back to camp, but we can keep going. And that's pretty cool. So Anne says, yeah, let's give it, well, we've got a 6 to go back. Do we take the risk or not? The doctor went back. You know, she's saying, you know, we've had a good run. Before we run out of luck, let's go back and tend to our camp. Alex agrees, so let's go roll some dice. Okay, Anne is going to roll for Anne and Alexander to go back. Okay, here we go. A 6. So we just made it back to camp. Man, that was a close call. Whew. Okay, so everybody has come back to camp, and that's basically the last action that took place. So now we're going to go on to our rest and recovery phase. Okay, since none of us are lost, we've all come back and we're sharing our stories about sitting around the camp, about exploring the island as we sit around the campfire that's crackling away happily for us. We say, well, the first thing we have to do is feed. So we don't have any food towels in our storage, but we do have food. So we're going to take 3 of our food. Anne, is going to keep her special food store to herself. And we're going to use 3 food stores from the storage, or 3 food from the storage to feed ourselves. when we do that, we are going to get, now if we do eat our food, I think we get something back. So, okay, yeah, okay, each castaway must eat at least one food. We lose one energy and gain two injuries if we fail. If we do eat a food, everybody recovers one injury. So now Charles is at 1, Anne is at 4, and Alexander's at 3. But that's not all. Next thing we're going to do is rest. Now, since we have our campfire lit, and there's wood on the fire, the wood is consumed. So we have to remove it right now. Boom. It is gone. It is consumed. Now, that's the point at which we consume the food, and we then have to make sure to put more fire on the fire next turn. We do have wood to do that with, and we will. If the campfire is lit, so we are going to recover energy. If it isn't, then yeah, we don't get to do that. But then we also get to look at what we have in our shelter. So Charles is going to go up to 2, Anne is going to go up to 5, and Alex is going to go up to 4. So the last thing we have to contend with is Charles' wound. Now it says first aid. You may roll a die before checking for trauma, which is what we're about to do. If you get a 5 or 6, remove 1 trauma from any player. Okay, we don't have to worry about that. First we have to see if his injuries worsen. So what we have to do is roll a die equal to the amount of injuries we have, and if we roll a 1, that injury turns into a trauma, and that's bad. So let's go roll a die and see what happens. Okay, let's roll and see what we get. We got a 3, so we did not suffer a trauma, and next turn he can rest and recover that injury and get rid of it. So let's go back to the table and wrap up our turn. Okay, so now we get to basically we do our upkeep. We already did the injuries piece, so that didn't take effect. That's part of the end turn. The next thing we would do is check to see if we have any white cubes left over from food tokens, fish or forage tokens that we have in our storage, and we don't. So we don't have to worry about rounding those up because those would rot and go bad. We don't have to worry about lost explorers. And we basically then, the last thing we do is we pass the start player over to Anne along with the white meeple, and that is going to end our first round of Castaways. So guys, thanks for watching. I hope this is a game that you want to see and enjoy. Please let me know. While I am trying to make sure I play this accurately, this is one of those fiddly games, so I'm liable to make some errors. In addition, you know, basically, if you do see that, please let me know. But also, the game, again, is very story-driven, so I look at this, I'll try to do my best not to make errors, but I'm not going to go back and correct some oddball ones I might make, even though I'm sure I will. So far, I think we're doing okay. We've gathered some stuff. We've taken our first major exploration and actually gotten some headway on it. But that's where it's going to end for this evening. So thanks again, guys, and I hope you enjoy the continuing playthrough of Castaways.